It was late evening when I heard the faint crunch of tires over gravel, the slow hum of an engine cutting off in front of my house. Through the lace curtains I saw the familiar black SUV, the one my son had bought with the money I loaned him 2 years ago, money he promised to pay back when things settled. They never did. And tonight, as the car door opened and my daughter-in-law stepped out, I knew this visit wasn't going to be a pleasant one. She looked as flawless as ever, dressed in an elegant beige trench coat that didn't suit the modest tone of our quiet neighborhood. Her hair was tied neatly, makeup done to perfection, as if she were coming for tea, not to face the woman she'd disrespected one too many times. I didn't move from my chair. I wanted to see how she'd react when she reached the door. The door she had once slammed in my face when I came to visit their house. The same door she'd claimed was her space, when she and my son fought and he came to me for comfort. Tonight, the door she was about to face wasn't hers anymore. I heard the sound of her heels clicking across the porch, sharp, deliberate, confident. Then the metallic rattle of keys. 1, 2, 3 turns. A pause. Then again. Louder. More desperate. I smiled faintly. Through the door I could hear her muffled voice, half talking to herself, half to the universe. What the hell, why isn't this? I stood up slowly, opened the inner latch, and pulled the door open just enough for the porch light to cast across her startled face. "Good evening," I said softly. She froze, keys still in her hand. "Oh, hi. I didn't expect you to be home so early." Her tone was brittle, forced, the kind of politeness one uses when they don't know what game is being played. "I live here," I said simply. "Yes, of course," she stammered. "I just came to pick up a few of my things. David told me I could come by." I studied her for a long moment, her eyes darting nervously to the locked door behind me. Her designer purse was slung across her shoulder, her phone clutched tight, her usual shield of arrogance beginning to crack. "Oh, he didn't tell you?" I said finally, leaning against the doorframe. "I changed the locks yesterday." Her expression went blank. Then slowly her lips parted. "You what?" "I changed the locks," I repeated calmly. "Yesterday." For a moment there was only silence. The wind rustled through the porch plants, and I could hear the faint hum of a neighbor's TV through the evening air. Then came the thud, her suitcase dropping to the porch, followed by the clatter of keys hitting the step. Her voice trembled, the polished arrogance gone. "You can't do that," David said. "David doesn't live here anymore," I interrupted. "And you certainly don't." Her eyes widened. "We were going to stay here for a few days. Just until the new apartment." "I know," I said quietly. "And I was willing to help. Until I found out what really happened." She blinked, confusion giving way to panic. "What are you talking about?" I folded my arms, watching her. "Do you want to come inside? Or would you rather I tell you right here, where the neighbors can hear?" Her pride faltered for a moment. Then she nodded stiffly. "Fine. 5 minutes." When she stepped in, her eyes flicked around the living room, scanning for any trace of hostility, or perhaps for something she could use against me later. But what she saw instead were packed boxes by the stairs. "My packed boxes. Are you moving?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. "But not before I made sure my house was safe." I gestured to the sofa and she sat, perching on the edge like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. "You see," I began, "when my son told me you two were having financial problems, I believed him. I helped. Quietly. I didn't ask questions. I just wanted you both to get back on your feet." She nodded quickly, eyes darting toward the door again. "Yes, and we appreciated that." I held up my hand, but then I saw the credit card statement. Her body stiffened. "The one in my name," I continued. "The one that was used to buy handbags, hotel stays, and what was it called? The Lux Retreat Spa and Resort?" She swallowed hard. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," I said, voice firm now. "It was theft." Her eyes glistened, but not from guilt. From anger. "David told you? That coward. He said it was his idea." My heart sank. "He said it was his idea?" She nodded quickly, realizing her mistake too late. "I mean, he said it was mutual. We both thought." "You both thought I wouldn't notice," I finished for her. The room went still again. The clock ticked loudly. She sat there, blinking fast, as if hoping to wake up from a bad dream. Do you know what hurts the most? I said quietly. Not the money, not the lies, but the way you looked at me as if I were beneath you, as if I didn't know what you were doing. I raised my son better than this. She stood abruptly, voice sharp again. You can't just change the locks and throw us out like we're strangers. I met her eyes. You became strangers the moment you took what wasn't yours. She took a step closer, desperate now. Please just let me get my things. I'll pay you back, I swear. I shook my head. Your things are at the hotel. David picked them up this morning. Her face drained of color. He what? Yes, I said, stepping aside so the dim porch light framed her stunned silhouette. He's not coming here. He's not staying here. And you're not walking back in like nothing happened. For a long moment she didn't move. Her breathing hitched, her fingers clenched into fists, and the mask she always wore, the one of control, superiority, confidence, shattered completely. She turned toward the door, voice breaking. I don't believe you. Believe what you want, I said softly. But the truth doesn't need your permission. And as she stepped back onto the porch, the sound of her suitcase wheels scraping against the wooden boards was the only noise between us. Then, before she could reach the driveway, I added quietly, tell David I wish him peace. But this house is finally mine again. Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn around. The car door opened, then closed. The headlights flickered on, washing the yard in pale light before she drove away into the night. I stood there long after she left. Not triumphant, not vengeful. Just free. The kind of freedom that comes when the last chain finally falls away. The night air carried a chill that brushed against my skin, but I didn't move. I stood there on the porch, my hand resting against the doorframe, watching the faint trail of headlights fade into the darkness. For the first time in years my house felt silent, truly silent. No voices echoing down the hallway, no footsteps pacing with tension, no laughter that wasn't real. Just the hum of the old refrigerator inside and the faint whistle of wine through the maple tree outside. I closed the door slowly, the click of the new lock echoing in the empty space behind me. The sound was oddly comforting, like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. I took a deep breath and let it out, realizing my chest had been tight for months, maybe years. All that pretending I didn't notice the distance, the whispers, the way my son's eyes darted away when I asked how they were really doing. He used to talk to me every day. When he was little, he'd sit at this very kitchen table, telling me about the frogs he caught by the stream or how he wanted to build rocket ships one day. He was so full of light. Then she came along. I don't blame her for everything. Love can twist even the strongest hearts. But somewhere along the way, my son's light began to dim. He started speaking like her, moving like her, caring about the things she cared about. Status, appearances, perfection. And when he laughed, it wasn't the same laugh. It was practiced. I made my way to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of tea, though it was more for the warmth than the taste. The chair creaked as I sat. The same chair he once painted blue when he was 5 because he said it reminded him of the sky. I smiled faintly at the chipped edges. Memories lived in this house. They were painted into every corner. But lately those memories had been buried under tension, money fights, and the sound of doors slamming. I thought about the last time he'd been here before everything broke. He'd stood right where she had tonight, his eyes red, his hands trembling. Mom, it's just temporary, he'd said. We'll pay you back. She's trying, I promise. I wanted to believe him, but I saw the exhaustion behind his words, the way his voice cracked when he said her name. I knew he was trapped between guilt and loyalty. The next day my savings account was missing another $1,000. I didn't say a word. Not then. But I started preparing. Slowly. Quietly. Changing passwords, shifting accounts, gathering documents. And when the final betrayal came, the spa trip charged to my card, I knew it was time. That night, I sat with the locksmith until midnight, watching him work. Every turn of his screwdriver sounded like a heartbeat returning to its rhythm. Now, sitting alone, I realized that changing the locks wasn't about keeping them out. It was about letting myself back in. The phone buzzed on the counter, and my heart jumped when I saw his name. David. For a moment I hesitated. Then I picked it up. Mom. His voice was low, weary. I figured you'd call, I said softly. There was a pause. She told me what happened. I imagine she did. She said you changed the locks. I did. Another silence. I could hear traffic in the background, the faint sound of city horns. I didn't want it to come to this, he said finally. We were just trying to figure things out. I didn't think. No, I cut in gently. You didn't. He exhaled a long broken sound. She's angry. She said I should have warned her. And did you? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us until it became heavier than words. Where are you staying? I asked after a while. A motel, he said quietly. We're figuring it out. David. I started then stopped. There were so many things I wanted to say. That I missed him, that I wanted to hold him and tell him everything would be okay. But the words stayed trapped behind the years of disappointment. He spoke first. Mom, I didn't know about the credit card. Not until it was too late. I believe you, I said truthfully. But believing you doesn't erase what she did. Or what you let happen. He sighed again, softer this time. I know. I didn't know how to stop it. Every time I tried, it turned into a fight. She'd say I didn't care about her, that I was choosing you over her. And maybe I was. But she's my wife, Mom. I understand loyalty, I said. But loyalty without honesty destroys everything it touches. There was a faint sniffle on the other end, and my heart ached. I'll fix it, he whispered. I'll make it right. I hope so, I replied. But I need to fix things for myself too. We talked for a few more minutes, quietly, carefully. By the time the call ended, I could hear something in his voice I hadn't heard in a long time, humility. Maybe even clarity. Afterward, I sat by the window again, tea gone cold beside me. The night had grown darker, and the streetlight flickered in soft pulses. I watched a cat slink across the driveway, its shadow stretching long across the concrete. The world outside seemed peaceful, almost forgiving. I picked up one of the boxes by the stairs and carried it to the living room. Inside were old photo albums, the kind with plastic sleeves and fading edges. I flipped through them page by page. There he was, my little boy in the backyard, holding up a frog with a grin too big for his face. There he was at graduation, shaking hands, eyes full of pride. Then in the later pages, the smiles turned quieter, more practiced. I traced my finger over one photo, the three of us sitting on this very porch, sunlight streaming behind us. She looked radiant. He looked happy. And I looked hopeful. I closed the album and pressed it to my chest. The house groaned softly, settling in the night like it too was finally at peace. But deep down I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Because families don't shatter in a single night. They unravel slowly, and sometimes if you're strong enough, you can weave them back together. Just not with the same thread. The morning sunlight slipped through the curtains like golden threads, scattering across the hardwood floor. I woke to the quiet creak of the house settling, a familiar sound that once filled me with loneliness, but today it felt different, alive, breathing, aware. The air was still, yet it carried something weighty, a calm after the storm. I made my way to the kitchen, every step echoing in the empty hallways that no longer felt haunted by regret or resentment. I poured myself a cup of coffee, not tea this time. Strong, black, bitter, but it was mine, and that small ownership filled me with peace. As I stirred the cup absent-mindedly, the faint buzz of my phone broke the silence. A message. My heart tightened when I saw his name. David. The message was short, hesitant. Can I come by? Just 4 words, but they held a tremor. The kind that only comes from someone standing at the edge of change. I didn't reply immediately. I looked out the window, watching the autumn leaves tumble down the driveway, their descent graceful yet inevitable. Then I typed back a single word. Yes. 2 hours later, the familiar sound of tires on gravel filled the air again. For a moment I felt the old unease stirring, memories of arguments, of false apologies, but then I took a deep breath and opened the door before he could knock. He stood there, holding a duffel bag that looked far too small to hold everything he'd lost. His eyes, once so bright, were shadowed, tired. But when he met my gaze, I saw something else flicker behind them. Something I hadn't seen in years. Remorse. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Hi, David. He lingered on the porch, uncertain if he was allowed to step inside. The hesitation broke my heart, But it also told me he understood what respect meant again. I nodded, and he entered slowly, glancing around as though walking through a memory. The scent of old wood and coffee greeted him, the same as it always had. "She left," he said softly, setting his bag down. "After last night. She said she couldn't do this anymore." "I know," I said, not with bitterness but with finality. "She made her choice." He rubbed his hands together, his voice shaking. "I kept trying to fix things. I thought if I just worked harder, earned more, kept the peace. But I lost myself, Mom. I lost you." I walked over to the window where sunlight painted the floor and turned to face him. "You didn't lose me, David. You just forgot where home was." He sat down, elbows on his knees, eyes glassy. "I saw the credit card bill. All of it. You were right. I should have listened sooner. Sometimes," I said gently, "you have to walk through the fire to understand the burn." He looked up at me, a small broken smile playing on his lips. "You always have a way with words." "I had to," I replied, managing a faint smile. Words were all I had when everything else was slipping away. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Outside, a soft breeze moved through the trees, scattering a handful of golden leaves against the window. It felt like nature itself was exhaling, letting go. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I found this when I was packing." He handed it to me. It was an old drawing, one he'd made as a child. Crayon lines smudged with time. A stick figure family. Him, me, and a house with a big red heart above it. "You kept this," I whispered. "I always did," he said. "Even when I didn't deserve to." The tears came softly, not from pain but from relief. I realized then that forgiveness doesn't always come wrapped in apologies or explanations. Sometimes it just comes in silence, in shared memories, in the small moments where two hearts remember what love used to feel like. He stood and walked toward the door, then turned back. "I don't expect you to forget, Mom. I just want to earn your trust again." I nodded. "Then start with honesty. No secrets. No pretending." He nodded too, and for the first time his shoulders seemed lighter. "I can do that." When he left, I watched from the window as he walked down the path, not with the hurried steps of guilt, but with the slow, deliberate pace of a man rebuilding himself. I didn't know where his road would lead, or if he'd find his way back completely. But I knew one thing for certain. I had done what I needed to do, not out of anger but out of love. As the day faded into dusk, I walked out onto the porch again. The same place where she had stood, keys trembling in her hand, pride crumbling under the weight of truth. But now that memory no longer stung. It was just a story that had run its course. The sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. I thought about the locks, the new ones glinting faintly in the last light. They weren't just barriers, they were boundaries. Proof that protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's survival. I sat down in the old wicker chair, the one David once tried to fix with glue and tape when he was 10. The wood creaked beneath me and I smiled. Life has a way of breaking and mending in cycles, and maybe this was just another one of those moments, a fracture healing in its own time. I closed my eyes and listened to the world outside, the crickets, the wind through the trees, the faint sound of a car in the distance. Somewhere out there, my son was driving toward a new beginning. And here in this quiet house, I was learning how to live again. The night settled gently, wrapping the house in its calm. I didn't feel angry or bitter or even sad anymore. Just still. And maybe that's what peace really is. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance that some stories must break before they can end. As I stood to go inside, I whispered softly into the evening air. "Goodbye, yesterday." Then I turned my key one last time. The lock clicked, steady and sure, sealing not just the door, but everything I was finally ready to leave behind.